I always like to end on a positive note, so here is a rousing, uplifting song which is guaranteed to cheer you up. When you attend a funeral, it is sad to think that sooner or later those you love will do the same for you. And you may have thought it tragic, not to mention other adjectives, to think of all the weeping they will do. But don't you worry, no more ashes, no more sackcloth, and an armband made of black cloth will someday nevermore adorn a sleeve. For if the bomb that drops on you gets your friends and neighbors too, there'll be nobody left behind to grieve, and we will all go together when we go. What a comforting fact that is to know. Universal bereavement, an inspiring achievement. Yes, we all will go together when we go. We will all go together when we go, all suffused with an incandescent glow. No one will have the endurance to collect on his insurance. Lloyds of London will be loaded when they go. We will all fry together when we fry. We'll be French fried potatoes by and by. There will be no more misery when the world is our rotisserie. Yes, we all will fry together when we fry. We will all bake together when we bake. There'll be nobody present at the wake. With complete participation in that grand incineration, nearly 3 billion hunks of well-done steak. We will all char together when we char, and let there be no moaning of the bar. Just sing out a Te Deum when you see that ICBM, and the party will be come as you are. We will all burn together when we burn. There'll be no need to stand and wait your turn. When it's time for the fallout and St. Peter calls us all out, we'll just drop our agendas and adjourn. We will all go together when we go, every Hottentot and every Eskimo. When the air becomes Uranus, we will all go simultaneous. Yes, we all will go together when we all go together. Yes, we all will go together when we go.
Swinging for the fences, hanging from the moon. I cut my tongue on the rust of a silver spoon. I bet my billionth bottom dollar on a hopeless case, and now the devil on my shoulder has a knife to my face. Sometimes the short end of the stick is the sharpest. Sometimes the only road to take is the darkest. Sometimes all you gotta say is daddy, make it go away. Sometimes the only way out is as a carcass. racing toward the mailbox with a letter in your hand. But the postman's gone away, you begin to understand that you're no hero to this story, you're just another wretched pawn who bought his tickets to the sideshow and then slept through the alarm. Sometimes the short end of the stick is the sharpest, sometimes the only road to take is the darkest. Sometimes all you gotta say is daddy, make it go away. Sometimes the only way out is as a carcass. Sometimes you gotta finish what you shouldn't have started. Sometimes you gotta shoot before you see the target. And sometimes daddy's gonna say you're not worth the price to pay. Sometimes the tunnel only leads to darkness. Sometimes the short end of the stick is the sharpest. Sometimes the only road to take is the darkest. Sometimes all you gotta say is daddy, make it go away. Sometimes the only way out is as a carcass. Sometimes you gotta finish what you shouldn't have started. Sometimes you gotta shoot before you see the target. Sometimes daddy's gonna say you're not worth the price to pay. Sometimes the tunnel only leads to darkness. You build this shit.
Washington, D.C. And everyone on cable and sun. Have the taxpayers fuel up my Air Force One. Put in place my press embargo. Gotta be left alone to fun and sun in Mar-a-Lago. Mar-a-Lago, I hope the ocean don't swallow, like some say they know it will one day. Mar-a-Lago, I hope the ocean don't swallow, like some say they know it will someday. Well, the senators and congressmen are all telling me what to do. How am I supposed to know if any of the stuff they're saying is true? Sure, I like to get on the mic and gin up the crowd, but I'd rather be on the tee where those folks aren't allowed. Mar-a-Lago,
It's my show, ding dong.
Hello! It is July 16th, 2025. I'm Left Hand Stu. How's everybody's Wednesday going? We got some late breaking news just as it's going live. Maureen Comey, federal prosecutor in the Sean Diddy Combs and Ghislaine Maxwell cases, has been fired. I think she's Comey's like daughter-in-law, maybe? We'll find. It's in the story. We'll get there. But we got a lot of stuff on the docket. Obviously, there's the Epstein stuff just keeps getting weirder and weirder, and everybody trying to say let's move on just seems to look guiltier and guiltier. So I guess we'll start with that. So the Justice Department on Wednesday fired Maureen Comey from the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, where she most recently led the prosecution of Sean Diddy Combs, multiple sources told ABC News. A spokesman for the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan declined to comment. A spokesman for the Justice Department did not immediately respond to a call for comment. Comey was highly regarded assistant U.S. attorney who successfully prosecuted Ghislaine Maxwell, the former associate of sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, and multiple gang members before the split verdict earlier this month in the trial of Combs, who was convicted of prostitution-related charge but acquitted of the more serious charges. Comey was also involved in the office's case against Epstein, who died by suicide in 2019, allegedly, at New York City Metropolitan Correctional Center while he was awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges. Comey is the daughter of former FBI Director James Comey, who President Donald Trump fired during his first term in office because he initiated the Russia investigation, the Russia investigation. According to sources, Trump privately vented about having Comey work in his administration. This marks the latest shakeup for the nation's most prominent federal prosecutor's office. In April, the office's top prosecutor, Matthew Podolsky, agreed to step aside, clearing the way for Trump to install Jay Clayton, his nominee for interim U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Podolsky had taken over for Danielle Sassoon, who in February resigned in protest of the Justice Department's order to drop corruption charges against New York Mayor Eric Adams. Sassoon had been named interim U.S. Attorney by Trump when the president fired Edward Kim, who assumed the role during the change in administrations. Jesus. Good Lord. It just keeps coming. And in also related news, it now turns out that missing minute is almost 3 minutes. So this was from Wired yesterday. The FBI's Jeffrey Epstein prison video had nearly 3 minutes cut out. Metadata from the raw Epstein prison video, shows approximately 2 minutes and 53 seconds were removed from one of two stitched together clips. The cut starts at the missing minute. Which, does that mean they also altered the little timer there? Because it goes from, like, doesn't it go from, like, 11, well, I guess it goes from, like, 11:58, so maybe it's, like, we don't know what the second counter is there on, or whatever. So newly uncovered metadata reveals that nearly 3 minutes of footage were cut from what the U.S. Department of Justice and Federal Bureau of Investigation described as full raw surveillance video from the only functioning camera near Jeffrey Epstein's prison cell the night before he was found dead. The video was released last week as part of Trump administration's commitment to fully investigate Epstein's 2019 death, but instead has raised new questions about how the footage was edited and assembled. Wired previously reported that the video had been stitched together in Adobe Premiere Pro from 2 video files, contradicting the Justice Department's claim that it was raw footage. Now, further analysis shows that one of the source clips was approximately 2 minutes and 53 seconds longer than the segment included in the final video, indicating that the footage appears to have been trimmed before release. It's unclear what, if anything, the minutes cut from the first clip showed. I don't know. The nearly 3-minute discrepancy may be related to the widely reported 1-minute gap between 11:58:58 and 12 a.m. that Attorney General Pam Bondi has attributed to a nightly system reset, which just on its face sounds insane. That's a thing that would be included in a video game about escaping from prison. Like, that's your 1-minute window every night to try and escape. In the final version of the video, and was trimmed to the 11:58:58 mark, right before the jump to midnight. Metadata confirms that the first video file, which showed footage from August 9th, 2019, continued for several minutes beyond what appears in the final version of the video, and was trimmed to the 11:58:58 mark, right before the jump to midnight. The cut to the first clip doesn't necessarily mean that there is additional time unaccounted for. The second clip picks up at midnight, which suggests the two would overlap, nor does it prove that the missing minute was cut from the video. Okay. All right. Well, that's a little less conspiratorial. It's a little bit of a rain on the conspiracy parade there. But yeah. But you know who's really been having a wild time, sort of losing his mind watching all of this is, where is it? CoffeeZilla, who's been following a lot of this. He's on this case, and I really like CoffeeZilla. He does, I would call what he does journalism. Like, I have no qualms calling what he, like, especially with the Bitcoin stuff, the crypto. That was the word I was trying to think of. Like, he talks to firsthand sources. He digs through like the data and like text sources, and like he understands how all those, like, how to read all of those numbers and like trace wallets and stuff. CoffeeZilla is killing it.
This is the worst cover-up of my lifetime, the Epstein case. The reason I'm talking about it so much is because
it's a joke. Like, imagine, like, think of the FBI and the intelligence services and the deep state and the aura of like menace and like being like pulling the strings behind the scenes and what you're supposed to think all of these organizations are. And compared to this is the most slapstick attempt to get people to stop paying attention to something I've ever seen. Everything they do only makes people more interested in it and more like I'm starting to see people who, like, maybe 2 weeks ago would have dismissed the entire... are you kidding me? Did we really just freeze again? I thought I fixed this. Okay, all right. That was an easier fix than usual. Yeah, I think, and they like the House Republicans voted against releasing whatever Epstein files that could be released. Yeah, Ghislaine Maxwell was like, I'm willing to testify, which I don't know if that, I never actually saw like concrete reporting on Ghislaine Maxwell wanting to speak, which I would be surprised if she was actually willing to. But like, just like, if you've ever seen the Oliver Stone JFK documentary, just imagine how like how dumb that movie would be if he had to make the Oliver Stone Epstein assassination documentary, or whatever, however he died, allegedly.
If you can get away with this, you really can get away with anything. If the government can tell people to not believe what they just said a few months ago and have everyone be fine with that, that's just a level of gaslighting that I refuse to be a part of. Never forget, they just promised us names in the release of the Epstein files.
Breaking news right now, you're going to see some Epstein information being released.
What kind?
A lot of
He also had a good tweet on this one too. Where was it? Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, it's just like, because what was it because he's referencing, I think, something Trump said. There it is. Where it's like, are these the weaklings and stupid people who fell for the Democratic hoax? Because what was it that Trump said? He said something like, there was video where he said something like on the White House lawn.
I know you've urged people to move on, but I'm curious, why do you think your supporters in particular have been so interested in the Epstein story and so upset about how it's been handled?
I don't understand why they would be so interested. He's dead for a long time. He was never a big factor in terms of life. I don't understand what the interest or what the fascination is. I really don't. And the credible information's been given. Don't forget, we went through years of the Mueller witch hunt and all of the different things, the Steele dossier, which was all fake. All that information was fake. But I don't understand why the
I'm going to jump back to the beginning.
They would be so interested. He's dead for a long time.
He hasn't been dead that long. Like, when did he die? It was 2019?
He was never a big factor in terms of life.
It was during your last term, dude.
I don't understand what the interest or what the fascination is. I really don't. And the
he died while your administration was prosecuting him.
We went through years of the Mueller witch hunt and all of the different things, the Steele dossier, which was all fake. All that information was fake. But I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff. It's sordid, but it's boring. And I
it's sordid, but it's boring?
I think, well, really only pretty bad people, including fake news, want to keep something like that going. But credible information, let them give it.
Away.
Anything that's credible, I would say let them have it.
You were the people. Up until, like, literally maybe a week and a half ago, you were the only, like, your cohort, your supporters were, like, the only ones keeping this flame lit. And then, yeah. Why would Biden do this? I can't believe Biden would do this.
logs, a lot of names, a lot of information.
But in this case, in Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
Is it going to be shocking?
I don't see how it's not shocking that there were so many individuals that were hidden and kept secret and not been held accountable.
Yeah, well, apparently there are no names to be given.
Like,
no list,
this could actually become like a thing that fractures this coalition. You cannot whip the cranks up into a fever and then just expect them to stop on a dime.
Epstein has now been pushed as a lone trafficker. It's the lone trafficker theory, guys. Essentially, the government's memo that they just released contradicts everything we've seen before and now basically implies that Epstein was trafficking to himself and Ghislaine Maxwell was trafficking to Epstein, and there was no other blackmail or trafficking going on. That's what this memo essentially implies. His wealth and his power then would be just from his skill as a New York financier.
I'm talking about Jeff Epstein, the New York financier.
Basically, he was the world's greatest tax advisor by day and the world's greatest trafficker at night to himself. And the rich and powerful people who all flocked to him and to his island had no idea of this double life. That really is kind of the heart of the modern theory, is that just all Epstein by himself, and then his friends just were there for his tax advice, despite not being a tax professional or a lawyer. Not only that, another huge revelation is the fact that really the government has increased the number of victims and decreased the number of perpetrators, right? We had the idea that there were these other perpetrators for a while, that they were just redacted.
Not usually how it works.
Cases. Now we got pretty clear statements that there isn't evidence to bring future cases on third parties. But if you look at the original 2019 indictment, it says dozens of victims. This is from Ken Klippenstein. But the Epstein review says over 1,000 victims.
Which is consistent with
So what happened, guys? And by the way, in the interim, they also increased the number to 200 to 250.
200 victims. 200.
Yeah, it was,
so we have well over 250 actually.
So we went from dozens to 200 to over 1,000 in the span of basically a year in terms of victims. We like 10x the number of victims, but now there's no perpetrators. Like the perpetrators have been reduced. That is the crazy thing about what they're implying here, what this lone trafficker theory is pushing forward. It's also strange because previously Epstein in a court filing is said to have provided information to the FBI as agreed upon. Case agent advised that no federal prosecution will occur in this matter as long as Epstein continues to uphold his agreement with the state of Florida. So apparently there was some deal where Epstein was providing information to the FBI. What information? We don't know because no one else was involved. There's also the simple fact that if you go to the FBI records, what they call the vault, most of the files are just heavily redacted. So the idea that we got some transparency wave is literally a joke. Yes, it is true. There's no Epstein list where there's like names written down, but names exist in documents, on videos, in images, and they're all redacted. What's going on here? They're gonna say, oh, it's all for the victims, right? But it's not all victim names. In addition to that, this lone trafficker theory is already on shaky grounds when you think about Prince Andrew's settlement with Virginia Giuffre, where he paid $16 million to make civil sexual assault allegations go away. Now, of course, it's worth saying that he did not admit to guilt. This was a settlement, but that is what you're always going to have with these rich and powerful people. In the same way, you also have Leon Black, who reportedly paid $158 million over 5 years to Jeffrey Epstein for tax advice. And guess what? Leon Black, billionaire, also paid the U.S. Virgin Islands $62 million in cash as part of a settlement, a non-prosecution, where they wouldn't go after him for anything from, quote, any and all claims of any nature whatsoever, specifically related to Jeffrey Epstein. It's worth noting that $15 million of this cash payment will be going to counseling programs and activities or mental health services. You also have Jess Staley, the former boss of Barclays. He directly admitted to having sex with a member of Epstein's staff, which you would expect if someone was running a trafficking operation. Although, I just have to say that there was a statement that this was entirely consensual, and I'm not saying anything about that. I'm simply saying the idea that Epstein was just trafficking for himself is unlikely to be true, in my opinion. Later, Staley wrote to Epstein, "Say hi to Snow White." Epstein replied, "What character would you like next?" Staley responded, "Beauty and the Beast." And then Jeffrey Epstein said, well, one side is available. Obviously, some
Considering how insane some of these cranks went over just any reference to cheese pizza to this day. Like, what does that mean? What could that possibly mean?
Of coded message, you can read into that for yourself, but all of this is public. That's what I'm trying to say. That's what makes the government's memo so infuriating. Is so much reporting has already been done. These settlements with powerful figures under denials, yes, but also under very questionable circumstances, make just a complete denial and statement that all of this was just Epstein impossible to believe. In September 2009, Epstein also emailed a woman named Irina to tell her that Jess Staley is staying in the Berkeley Hotel in London tonight. Staley emailed Epstein the next day to say, "I should have taken your offer," according to the Times. There's also this book by one of the 60 Minutes correspondents called A Ticking Clock, where he says that he met with Ghislaine Maxwell, and he said, "I want the tapes," I said to Maxwell at a table at Regency Bar. "I know he was videotaping everyone. I want the tape of Trump with the girls." She didn't deny the existence of the tapes, but said, "I don't know where they are." He apparently replied, "Ask Epstein," and she gave him a stern look and pointed a finger at my face. "I'm the daughter of a press baron. I know the way you people think. If you do one side, you must do the other. If you get tapes on Trump, you have to do Clinton." Now, again, what you...
They're just having this conversation in a public bar. Was Eyes Wide Shut really it? Like, maybe it was a documentary. I don't, like... Who knows? This is... I'm losing my mind.
Make of a third-hand source like this, talking to Ghislaine Maxwell, who apparently doesn't deny that some of these tapes exist. Was she even telling the truth or just playing some game? Either way, this was all known about, not just by people after the fact, but allegedly by people during the fact. This is from Mark Epstein. It's sourced from Jeffrey Epstein. Quote, "If I said what I know about both candidates, they'd have to cancel the election." That's what Jeffrey told me in 2016. So not even Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell allegedly were claiming this was all just between them. They were constantly insinuating that there were compromising things on various powerful people. What's funny is that Trump himself, even before he was in a position to declassify this stuff, had accused other powerful people of doing these things.
Bill Clinton. Nice guy. Got a lot of problems coming up, in my opinion, with the famous island with Jeffrey Epstein.
Like,
that
island was really a cesspool.
There's no question about it. Just ask Prince Andrew.
You also have the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was in touch with other convicted pedophiles. Larry Nassar, he was writing letters. So the idea, once again, that he was just by himself, off by himself, doing things on his island by himself and then taking calls with people like Bill Gates simply for philanthropic advice really pushes the bounds of belief. Don't forget, a close associate of Bill Gates was named a fallback executor on the will of Jeffrey Epstein, which he, by the way, said he was shocked by and he deeply regrets meeting Epstein. Bill Gates has said similar things to that effect. Of course, Bill Gates fraternized with Epstein after he was convicted of crimes. Previously, he told the Wall Street Journal, "I didn't have any business relationship or friendship with him." But in fact, he met multiple times with him at his Manhattan townhouse. Now, once again, I have to say real quick, all of these people are innocent until proven guilty. All of them deny doing anything untoward. But my point is, there are already too many associations to make the lone trafficker theory make any sense. For example, Jean-Luc Brunel was somebody who apparently trafficked a bunch of people to Epstein, who himself abused a bunch of women and even was charged for it. He was charged for some really awful things and then later found dead in his cell. Interestingly, Epstein was actually a financier of Brunel's modeling agency where a lot of this alleged abuse happened. So once again, the idea of the lone trafficker just doesn't make sense.
Melinda Gates essentially confirmed her divorce was because Bill went to Epstein Island. No guarantee she has proof, but I mean, I wouldn't want, like, if I were her, I wouldn't care. If you went to, I don't need proof more than you stepped foot on the island. I'm going to a divorce lawyer the next time it's open. If it's open when I find out, I'm on my way there. I don't need to know any more information. You went to the island? Okay, we're done.
Because Epstein's directly linked to another guy who is also abusing women. So after all of this, they're really asking you to believe the unbelievable. They're asking you to not believe what they've said about this case, both out of office and now in power. They're asking you to not believe public reporting linking Epstein to other known files. They're asking you not to believe suspicious circumstances regarding settlements of powerful people. They're asking you to believe that Epstein was just the greatest tax advisor and financial advisor on the planet that all of these billionaires needed to consult, despite the fact that there are entire organizations built around providing the same services as this without the, links to crimes. They're asking you to believe that when people are talking about Snow White and Beauty and the Beast, they're referencing Disneyland. And they're especially asking you to believe that they have found 900 new victims since reviewing these files and exactly 0 new perpetrators. So I'm just not buying it personally. I find it insulting to the intelligence of every single person who's ever looked at this story. And yeah, it really makes me feel like this was a appropriate time to launch a crime is legal merch collection, to be honest. So yeah, this is probably my last video on this for a while, but just disgusting.
Could have maybe dunked on Doug.
Oh. He said last video for a while. That was, when was this?
This is the worst cover-up of my lifetime, the Epstein case.
This was
the reason I'm talking about it
so. Put out a video today.
On his desk, then they didn't exist, then they were...
He put this out 16 hours ago.
First, the Epstein files were on Pam Body's desk, then they didn't exist, then they were written...
Yeah, he just went there he went for a beach day, played some volleyball, and then he went home.
By the Democrats. Now they're just plain all boring. You don't want to see what's in there.
It's pretty boring stuff. It's sorted, but it's boring. And I don't understand why it keeps going. I think really only pretty bad people, including fake news, want to keep something like that going. But credible information, let them give it. Anything that's credible, I would say, let them have it.
So there you hear it. Now, to some of you, the copium's going to set in. You're going to say, hey, he said the credible information, we can release it. We should release it, and we'll talk about that. But they also say in the same interview, we already released the credible information.
And the credible information's been given.
So if it's already been given, they're not going to give you more stuff. Now, funny enough, the guy next to Trump looking on and laughing as Trump says this is a big nothing burger. The only people who would deal in this kind of talk are fake news. That is Epstein's neighbor. That is Howard Lutnick, who has a house that was next to Epstein's place. You can see him laughing here. It's even been reported that Howard Lutnick's place actually literally touches Jeffrey Epstein's house. That's how close their two houses are together. That's the same guy.
I mean, here's the thing, though. What do you qualify as worst? Because I would say the cover-up of Biden's worsening mental acuity was executed much better. They were much better at hiding that. They kept that going for almost 4 years. I think that cover-up was executed much better. If we're talking about impact, we can have that debate. But when I say worst, I'm talking about like the actual execution of the cover-up, because so far their execution has only made people more interested and more suspicious. So that's what I'm judging it on.
Laughing at a statement by the president that Jeffrey Epstein is boring and there's no reason to look into him, and if you do, you're a bad person.
Really only pretty bad people, including fake news, want to keep something like that going.
I almost don't have...
Well, the alternate explanation, Sullivan Hall, is that the Biden administration didn't release it because it would have been equally damning for Democrats, probably. I don't think it would have been a partisan endeavor.
Words for this, to be calling it boring to be talking about one of the world's largest predators of all time and trying to figure out who the powerful people are who are connected with this guy, especially when the former neighbor of said predator is standing there laughing as you say that everyone interested in this case is somehow fake news or a bad person. You can see this both in property records and in public press statements at the time about Epstein's Manhattan townhouse, saying that Howard Lutnick of Cantor Fitzgerald bought the adjacent smaller townhouse owned by Lex Wexner. That's one of Epstein's famous benefactors. And
wait, sorry. I think my chat on my... Oh, wait. There we go. Is this show fake news that Trump is talking about? Wait, which show? I think the Biden administration was maybe more interested in other things. I think they maybe were happy for it to just go away.
in fact, Epstein owned the house that later got sold to Howard Lutnick. You can see he owns the trust that owned this house. Later, of course, it goes to Comet Trust and then to Howard Lutnick. Supposedly, the property was sold for $10 in cash value and some other equivalent things. We don't know how much, just to be clear. So maybe it was a fair value price. And maybe they don't know each other. I want to be clear that Howard Lutnick denies knowing Jeffrey Epstein or being associated, so we have to get that in there. But the optics of this are just completely insane, and anyone who's paying attention should not expect any further disclosures from the FBI, DOJ, despite the fact that Trump is sort of
also,
about facing on this and saying, well, we can give over the legitimate files, but as we just showed, the legitimate files they're claiming they've already put out. Here's Donald Trump saying that the Epstein files, once again, are a hoax, but he also says that they can be released if credible.
And in terms of the credibility of the different things that they've seen, I would say that, you know, these files were made up by Comey, they were made up by Obama, they were made up by the Biden, we went through years of that with the Russia, with all of the different things that we had to go through. We've gone through years of it, but she's handled it very well. And it's going to be up to her. Whatever she thinks is credible, she should release. Yeah.
So that's the second time now he's pushed it off on his attorney general to now handle. But I just don't think this is meaningful because, like I said, they've already said they've given us the credible information already. I think basically they're going to kill it from here. That's my guess, especially since we did get a word from Pam Bondi about this. When asked, she basically said we're just going to defer to the memo.
Would release credible files related to Mr. Epstein. Are you prepared to do that, and when would you do it?
Our memo speaks for itself, and we'll get back to you on anything else. I haven't seen all of his statements today.
So I think that shows pretty clearly that they're going to just continue barreling down this path while giving people a bone as far as making it seem like they might release something. This is a common smokescreen that we see where they will kind of bait people like, maybe we'll release something, maybe, and then every 12 months or something, they release something of complete non-importance. The problem is when people like this control the files, anything but a full release besides the CSAM and victims' names is not going to do it. You have to, the only way to do something like this is to release all of the files, except for those small categories. That's the only way to build back trust. But clearly that's not what's going to happen. And anyone who's paying the slightest bit of attention to what our leaders are actually saying, they are absolutely telling you they're not going to do it. They're all deferring to each other. Trump's deferring to Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi's deferring to the memo. And ultimately, no one is going to be held accountable. Now, there have been some political games played with this, with the Democrats trying to get the Epstein files released.
Yeah,
and this was actually
they're probably not going to be able to, even if the vote had gone through, I doubt they would have been able, it would have done anything to actually get anything released.
Blocked by people in Congress, which is just so mind-blowing to me that people would actually say no to releasing this, but they did.
Saying aye?
Aye.
Those opposed say no?
Could have. I don't know how it would have worked.
In the opinion, Chair, the noes have it. The amendment's not agreed
Chair, I'm kind of shocked by that. I will ask for a roll call.
5 yeas, 7 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to, and I think most of us believe what's appropriate will be released. when it is time for the president to release it.
Well, Madam,
Thank you.
So there you see it. We're just supposed to blindly trust that they're going to release it. Honestly, I have no faith in any of this. I think this is all political theater. Honestly, the people who are like, oh, look, it's just the Republicans. I mean, we could have released this a long time ago. To be honest, I don't trust any of these people until I see actual documents released. I believe this is all theater. I don't actually believe they're going to get this done. I think they could have been doing this from the very beginning. And truth be told, we've seen our government protect Jeffrey Epstein for over a decade. This didn't start in 2019 when he died. This has been going on since the early 2000s from his first plea deal where he got a non-prosecution agreement. I mean, we have been protecting this guy. Powerful people have been protecting him for years upon years upon years, and it crosses party lines. So while, yeah, I guess it's cool that we're like making little votes like this and we get to see like people actually put the words out there, like I'm not gonna force the release because they'll tell us when they feel like it, so we can see the despicableness firsthand. I don't actually believe that politicians are gonna be the one to open this case wide open. I think it's going to be either a leaker, a hacker, somebody who is just like willing to YOLO on this that will actually meaningfully move this case forward. I haven't seen any evidence that there is political will besides dunking on your political opponent to actually do anything. Because that's all we've really seen so far is people hit each other with the old, like, you're involved with Epstein. And then you go, whoa, hey, can you release the files? And they always say, well, we'd sure love to, but actually, no, we can't. Now, that might sound a little doomer. I won't blame you if you get excited about the possible release of the Epstein files. But I just feel like we've been down this road before with people promising to, expose the deep state, expose the guys in power. In fact, ironically, that's the story of how we got here now.
Again, it's just
is the Trump administration was dunking on their political opponents for years, saying that, they're secretly involved with Epstein until it was time to release the files. And then now, it was made by the Democrats. So that's where we're going to leave it. They're literally laughing at us. They're calling it boring. They're saying nothing to see here. While both people on the screen were somehow involved or linked to Jeffrey Epstein, it's beyond belief, honestly. And yeah, this is gonna be the last time I talk about Jeffrey Epstein.
Or like Trump was Q. Trump was the guy doing the QAnon releases.
Good morning, everyone.
Oh yes, so we'll jump to some actual useful, or I don't know. I was gonna say concrete. That's pretty punny. But some actual substantial news coverage. So we've got the Carney Liberals coming back with some responses to the recent announcement of the Trump tariffs.
I'm Walt Kopelar, a shareholder and executive vice president of Walters Group, and also an active board.
For hosting me, and for the Kopelar family for showing me around this incredible facility, one of 5 facilities, well, actually, and more facilities across Ontario and beyond. I also want to acknowledge, as Walt did, Keenan and your great work, and Ron Bedard from DeFasco, the backbone of the Canadian steel industry, the North American steel industry, and part of the global industry. Our country was built by steel workers such as those joining us here today, or I'm joining them rather. North America was built by workers like that. The world is built by workers like that. And it is entirely right that we're here with so many members of the government caucus joining for an important series of announcements. L'acier est à la fondation même.
What played an outsized role in this? Do you mean steel?
Du Canada. Et on aura besoin de beaucoup plus pour lancer les projets d'intérêt national qui s'étaleront sur les décennies à venir.
Oh, do you mean the American Railroad?
Sera aussi essentiel à nos projets d'infrastructure énergétique, nos ports, nos nouveaux corridors ferroviaires et commerciaux, la défense et nos centres de données sur l'intelligence artificielle. Mais nous devons d'abord surmonter certains grands défis immédiats. Yes, to get to where we need to go, we need to overcome some immediate challenges.
Pardon his French.
In recent years, the global steel industry has been undergoing a fundamental shift. Shifts driven by many factors, but I'm going to point out particularly foreign competition that unfairly benefits from non-market policies and practices. And now, the trade actions of the United States are further transforming global steel market dynamics and supply chains. Let's be clear. Canada will be one of the countries most impacted by these developments. It's because we are highly exposed to this fundamental restructuring that's happening in the global steel industry. We have substantial steel exports. We have very high per capita steel use. And we have a disproportionately open import market. In fact, we have one of the most open steel markets in the world. Imports supply almost 2/3 of current Canadian consumption of steel, compared to less than 1/3 for the United States and less than 1/6 for the European Union. And over time, we become too dependent on the United States as our biggest customer, with more than 90% of our steel exports going south of the border.
How's it going?
So moving forward, we must diversify our trade relationships. And above all, we must rely more on Canadian steel for Canadian projects. And those shifts start today. In an increasingly unpredictable and unreliable world, we must focus on what we can control. Nous pouvons positionner nos industries pour qu'elles réussissent. Nous pouvons préparer notre main-d'œuvre. Avec le bon plan, nous pouvons contrôler notre destin économique. Notre économie, ce que fait. Canada has what the world needs. We're becoming an energy superpower. And we are a leader in the building blocks of a modern economy. From high value-added steel
I am back
to
on
aluminum
bullshit.
to critical minerals
And
and artificial intelligence.
Started rewatching.
And Canadians
West
have
Wing
just
again
given
in my off time.
governments the mandate to build
I'm already on season 2. I have a goddamn problem.
big things, nation-building projects that will transform our economy. We have the potential to become our own best customer for steel.
He does exploit in some cases.
We will lose that ability if
Trump
we
is part
don't
of the
manage the profound transformation now
Fairness.
underway
Depending on how
in
punchy
the
you
industry.
feel.
And to do that, we have to change the way we do things so we can better support our companies and our workers during this time of change. And that's why I'm proud to announce today that Canada's new government will do several things. First, we will take a series of measures to stabilize our domestic steel market and prevent harmful trade diversion arising from current...
No, Trump's figured out a way to get his base to stop caring about the Epstein thing. He's found something they care about more. I've been speaking to Coca-Cola about using real cane sugar and Coke in the United States, and they have agreed to do so. I'd like to thank all those in authority at Coca-Cola. Someone, he finally tried Mexican Coke, and he's like, "What? What do you mean they have better Coke?"
trade tensions. Informed by the review of our steel trade arrangements that we announced last month, the following changes to tariff rate quotas will take effect by the end of this month. For steel products from non-free trade agreement countries, We will tighten the tariff rate quota level to 50% of 2024 volumes and apply a 50% tariff on any imports beyond those levels. For steel products from partners with free trade agreements, we will introduce a tariff rate quota level for steel products at 100% of 2024 volumes and apply the same 50% tariff on imports above those levels. The government is reviewing its remission framework to favor the use of Canadian steel and aluminum in Canadian-made products. And we will also implement additional tariffs on steel imports from all non-U.S. countries containing steel melted and poured in China. Our existing arrangements with our CUSMA partners will remain the same, including no changes to our current trade measures with the United States. The combination of all these measures will ensure that Canadian steel producers have a bigger share of the Canadian market. It will create more resilient supply chains and unlock private capital for Canadian production. But given the dynamics in global trade, we will reassess all of our existing trade arrangements with respect to steel, consistent with the progress made in our bilateral discussions with the United States, and will also take into account the steel negotiations that the U.S. is currently undertaking with other countries, because what happens in those will affect what happens here. Second, we will invest in Canadian steel companies and, above all, in Canadian steel workers. Building on previously announced enhancements to employment insurance and the EI work-sharing program, the Government of Canada will invest $70 million in labour market development agreements to provide training and income support for up to 10,000 affected steel workers. Through reskilling investments and increased worker supports, we will ensure workers have the skills and the support that they need to meet the future needs of this industry. To build a more resilient and diversified steel industry that serves the needs of a growing Canada, the government will provide $1 billion through the Strategic Innovation Fund to help Canadian steel companies advance projects that will increase their competitiveness, that will catalyze their production of steel products that are not currently produced in Canada, and to create jobs to serve growing sectors of our economy, including in defence. The Business Development Bank of Canada's pivot to grow.
I think maybe, and this is based on nothing but just observing, like human behavior and making some guesses on why people do certain things, and maybe what was messaged to Gould by her apparent snub was a lot more optimistic about her future than what was maybe presented to other people, shall we say. So I think maybe Gould they're like, I don't know. Maybe Gould sees more of a future there as being a good soldier. Where if she believes that if she does like go back into the trenches, as it were, for a little bit and is a good soldier for a little bit, that there will be chances for improvement and elevation and maybe a promotion. Yeah, quite possibly. But that's still a gamble. Like, it's like she'd have to leave her position and possibly lose to Crown. So I don't know. It's a risk reward assessment, and from what it seems, possibly there's more potential reward than risk.
initiative is also being enhanced to provide support to eligible small and medium-sized steel enterprises that face liquidity challenges. And $150 million of the government's regional tariff response initiative through its regional development agency.
But that's the thing where it's if she's showing that she's not committed to that, like, maybe that's why she, like, it's like if she has to show that she's pot committed, where if she runs for a leadership of another party while being an MP, then that doesn't show loyalty, sort of thing.
Will be prioritized for the steel industries. And finally, the large enterprise tariff loan program that was introduced at the start of this year will be updated in several ways. We'll expand eligibility and provide lower cost financing to firms in the steel industry. These changes will include reducing the minimum annual revenue requirements of borrowers from $300 million to $150 million, reducing the minimum loan size from $60 million to $30 million, extending the loan maturities from 5 to 7 years, reducing the initial interest rate, all while requiring companies to retain and reinvest in their workers. Through this series of measures, will help ensure that Canadian steel companies have the capital and the workers and the time to build the skills, the tools, the facilities to serve a growing Canada. Now, we will also prioritize using Canadian steel to build the big projects that we're undertaking, including millions of new homes, new ports, bridges, energy infrastructure, and investments in our security and defense capabilities. As we deliver on our mandate to build big things faster, we will ensure that Canadian steel and other Canadian materials are prioritized in that construction. And to that end, we will change the federal government's procurement process to require companies contracting with the federal government to source Canadian steel for government contracts. I see we didn't have to do that for Walter's group, who did it directly when in their service of Parliament and many other and the museums across this great nation. C'est que ce que notre plan pour bâtir un Canada fort permettra de faire. Nous allons de l'avant avec les investissements.
I should also probably just be pausing. Is it better if I pause it and talk then? But then it's like, then I'm gonna pause Andy, and it'll take us forever to finish any video.
Sans précédent dans l'énergie, l'infrastructure, la défense et la technologie. La loi sur l'unité de l'économie canadienne qui a récemment été adoptée permettra de réaliser de grands projets à une vitesse sans précédent en utilisant de l'acier, de l'aluminium et de minéraux essentiels canadiens et en tirant profit de l'expertise des travailleurs canadiens. Nous serons nous-mêmes notre meilleur client en créant davantage de carrières payantes chez nous et en augmentant notre production afin d'être mieux équipés pour rejoindre. To conclude, Canada's steel sector has a history of reinventing itself and reinvesting in itself at critical moments. After the Second World War, Canada built homes, factories, infrastructure at rates never seen before. And to meet that demand, the Canadian steel industry modernized rapidly and increased output substantially. Now we must pivot again. For Canada to build big things fast, we need our steel industry to advance, not retreat. Nous avons besoin d'une main-d'œuvre forte et qualifiée et un marché équitable et compétitif au Canada. C'est ce que nous faisons en tant que pays au cours de notre et c'est pourquoi l'industrie clé. Canada is shifting from reliance to resilience. We're giving ourselves far more than any foreign government can ever take away. We're building one Canadian economy out of 13.
It's so fun when you just hear those lines in the speech. And you're like, oh, you know they were like, oh, this is such a good line. They're just gonna kill it.
We're embarking on a series of nation-building projects. We are undertaking unprecedented investments in our defense and security, and we are diversifying our trading relationships. We're building with Canadian workers, using Canadian steel for a Canada strong. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to take your questions.
We'll now begin the question period. We'll do 15 minutes, one question, one follow-up. First question.
15 minutes of
Hi,
questions.
my name is Simone Gavros. I'm with CHCH News. My question is more of a local question about crime. Within the last few months, 2 random innocent bystanders were killed in 2 separate shootings. And in the latest shooting on Friday, that suspect is a 17-year-old who police are still looking for. There's also a lot of concern when it comes to repeat offenders. My question to you today is, what is your government doing to keep communities, including Hamilton, safe when it comes to gun violence?
Thank you very much for the question, and my sincere condolences for the victims of the direct victims of these crimes, their families, but also for the communities and the concern and anxiety that horrible crimes like this create. One of the things the federal government is doing, and we are making a huge emphasis on this, is to control our border better. Because I suspect, and we'll see when this individual is caught, that gun came from the United States.
Interesting.
Vast majority of firearms, illegal firearms, firearms used in crime, come across our border. And so what we've been doing in recent months is making very large investments in controlling
statistically
those
not wrong.
much better. We have to do more, but we're talking
a
thousands
huge amount
more,
of the crime guns, and I always kind of giggle.
We're talking drone surveillance,
like police terms like crime guns, where it's like that is the term, and it's to the point, it's direct, everyone knows exactly what it means, but it's the most I don't know, like there's a level of simplicity to it that just makes me think that like a 6-year-old was elevated to detective and is making up all these terms, and it's like he's nailing it every time, but it's like a 6-year-old come like what should we call him, or like Chief 6-year-old. We got a lot of guns being used for crimes. What should be the official term for him? Crime gun. But he nailed it. He nailed it. You got a better term for it? No. Well, we're going with crime guns.
Working more closely with the United States on both sides of the border, both elements of the border, including addressing the scourge of fentanyl. The second aspect to your question, which your question touches on and the tragic situations touch on, is bail reform. And the importance of bail reform, particularly with respect to repeat offenders. We have commitments on that. We're working with the provinces on those issues. I'll be meeting with the premiers next week.
Adjustments on the discussion about bail.
And you can expect legislation from this government in the fall.
With local Hamilton Mayor Andrew
Bail
Horvath?
reform legislation in the fall.
I'm sorry?
Have you met with local mayor in Hamilton, Andrew Horvath?
I have not met with Mayor Horvath, no. Thank you.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Miles Mead with Canadian Press. You told Canadians that you would be elbows up, and they appear to have largely given you a mandate to get a good deal from the president. But thus far, we have not seen that Canada has gotten basically nothing. And Canada also had to give one of its bargaining chips when it comes to the digital services tax, something other countries like the UK did not give up in their deal with the US. How do you still convince Canadians that you are really elbows up?
Well, look,
it is interesting that he never went after
in the midst of
any of the, because I think Australia has one too. UK has
and tough
one.
negotiations with the United States.
I think France as
and
well.
We're working for the best deal for Canada. We have put in place a series of retaliatory measures, including in the steel sector. We have secured tariff-free access for a number of Canadian goods. In fact, the percentages are very high in terms of outside of the most affected sectors, steel being one of them, autos, aluminum, forest products. The vast majority of Canadian goods and services are tariff-free. That is not the case for most other countries. We will continue to work constructively for a deal, but it has to be a deal that works for Canadians and Canadian workers. And part of the reason why we don't have a deal is that deal is not yet
Would
on
be
the
a
table.
bluff, but Carney said he has the
En français,
FT.
c'est plus courtement et nous continuons
that would be
de
some
travailler
elbows up
dans des
stuff.
négociations difficiles. C'est
Just
difficile
start
et,
dropping like
complexe
coded
avec les
like
Américains. Ça va
comments
continuer.
to make it clear that he
dans
knows
une manière
something.
constructive par rapport au gouvernement du Canada. Et la situation actuelle est une situation où il y a des secteurs clés dans notre économie, surtout l'acier, l'aluminium, les automobiles, le bois d'œuvre, qui sont beaucoup affectés par les menaces américaines. Mais en même temps, le grand montant des biens et services canadiens, des exportations des biens et services canadiens sont sans tarif pour le moment. On va continuer les discussions. C'est une période délicate à ce moment-ci. On va j'attends à ce que les négociations s'intensifient pendant les prochains jours. Et on va travailler, comme j'ai dit, dans une manière constructive afin d'avoir le meilleur accord pour le Canada. Mais à ce moment-ci, ce n'est pas sur la table. Alors, il faut continuer.
Next question. Samantha BD from CBC News. Is a trade deal with the U.S. likely to include some level of tariffs? And if so, will Canada impose tariffs on the U.S. as well?
Well, we'll see what the final agreement is.
It most likely will.
If there is an agreement, we're working towards an agreement in a constructive manner. And obviously, it's an agreement. There are both sides, and things will be structured accordingly. I think what's important, if I can bring it back to the situation here in the steel sector, is that the U.S. trade deals with other countries. And also the case when the U.S. doesn't have a trade deal with other countries are going to involve very high tariffs. And one of the consequences of those very high tariffs is it pushes product, steel in this case, and their derivatives, into a Canadian market that has historically been quite open. So it's important that we protect our market from those secondary effects, if you will, from the U.S. Negotiations.
But is Canada willing to impose tariffs? Is that something on the table?
Well, Canada has imposed tariffs.
What more?
Well, on verra. We'll see.
You gotta dot your I's and T's,
we believe in we believe in free trade. We believe that the best arrangements would be low tariffs. It's proven. You look at the Walters Group and the amazing work they do south of the border for some of the iconic buildings and in the United States. There actually isn't time to list them all, but many of which I know. And that's good for the U.S. It's good for Canada. Now, the U.S. has different priorities and has had different emphasis, and we have to adjust to that. Merci.
Next question.
Direk Çakır, Turkish Voice of Canada. Steel trade tensions with the U.S. are not just geopolitical. They affect real working families, many of whom are immigrants. How is your government ensuring not just the protection of Canada's steel industry, but also stability of the immigrant and newcomer workforce that plays a critical, often invisible role in sustaining this sector? That immigrant workforce who face both job precarity and systemic barriers to upward mobility, especially in communities where they are the backbone of production and logistics.
Well, first off, thank you for your question. The We are behind all workers and all citizens of Canada, to be absolutely clear, and that's why we're fighting hard in these trade negotiations. But it's also why a centerpiece of what we're announcing today for the steel sector is directly focused on workers. That's $70 million to help with retraining, upskilling, income support. Taking a step back from that, the investments that we're supporting through what's called this Strategic Innovation Fund, the $1 billion for the industry to build up new lines of work for markets that are going to grow here in Canada. It's good for the companies, but it's good for the workers and providing that sustain. So we're very focused. I'll say one last thing, which is that we also have been from the start ensuring that the revenues we collect from tariffs, the counter tariffs that we've had to put in place, that those go back to the workers and go back to support those workers for precisely the reasons that you say in your question. Thank you.
Hi, Prime Minister. Laura Stone, Globe and Mail.
Yeah.
BC Premier David Eby says that Canada has been talking to the provinces about a softwood lumber deal with the U.S. that could remove this irritant from the table. He said this could include quotas for how much wood is shipped from Canada. Do you see a potential to strike a softwood deal and settle this matter for the time being, and what role would quotas play?
Well, thanks for the question. We're in close contact. I'm in close contact with Premier Eby on this and many other issues, but this is one of the biggest. Without question. There is decades and decades of trade history, as you know, with respect to softwood lumber, U.S. trade actions there. There is normally some element of managed trade that comes out of any agreement that comes there. Can include quotas, can include a variety of trade factors, if I can put it that way. So that is a top priority. And we would like to resolve it at the same time as other trade issues with the United States. It is running on a slightly different timetable. Their timetable is different. It's a historic 232 action, if you probably know. And we'd like to bring it together and have it as part of a global agreement if we can, and that's certainly been the position of the Government of Canada. Thank you.
Hi, Prime Minister. Heather Wright, CTV News. You've said that the purpose of Bill C-5 is in part to speed up approvals for major national projects, and as you know, the bill is now being challenged in court by First Nations. Have your belated consultations jeopardized the goal of getting new projects built?
Well, first, they're only announced on like the last day of Parliament.
First thing is that the bill literally just received, well, in the last few weeks, as you know, received royal assent, so became law. The bill and the law, as it now is enabling legislation. The first thing it enables is consultations about what are we actually talking about when we say nation-building projects. And tomorrow, the first part of that engagement, it's not a consultation tomorrow, but the first part of that engagement, in fact, it starts this afternoon in Ottawa with a series of First Nations rights holders, other interested First Nations groups, including the AFN, obviously, is that engagement about the modalities, how this can work, how we work together, what are the priorities. That's before any consultation on any specific project or types of projects. And also before, even if there is a project or when there is projects identified, consultations around the conditions around those projects that must be fulfilled for them to be built, and then moving forward from that.
En français,
Rapidement, on va commencer. Si, le passé que les peuples.
Vous avez ouvert quel pourcentage?
Question, but if I responded to it, it would be a bad response in the middle of a negotiation. That's really, the rest of it was just filler. Sorry.
Lucy admits it.
Daniel Dove, Global News. Prime Minister, Global News has, an investigation has unveiled that the Public Safety Minister wrote letters before he was the Public Safety Minister on behalf of a man
and
He's already had to
immigration status
recuse
to come to
himself, and
Canada,
this is probably
even though
one of
this
the
man
reasons
was a
why he's had to
member of
recuse
a
himself.
listed suspected terrorist group. The public safety minister is in charge of border security, obviously very important to any trade deal going forward. What confidence do you have in the public safety minister with your reaction to this, sir?
Thank you for the question. Look, the public safety minister has been transparent about the details of that situation, and he has my confidence. Thank you.
This will have time for one last question. Then I have to stop.
Pretty straightforward, correct?
Councillor, please.
Hi there, Fallon Hewitt from the Hamilton Spectator. I had a question. So you've spoken about the supports for steelworkers, but the impacts of tariffs stretch far beyond those companies. How will your government support cities like Hamilton that are home to thousands of steelworkers with the impact stretching far beyond just those workers, but businesses all across the city?
Great question. And the first thing in answer to that, because your question goes to the heart of the overall issue and the economic strategy. And the first thing to recognize is they call, this is Steel Town for a reason. It's at the heart. It's the heart of the industries and associated industries that have been built there. It's at the heart. Steel's at the heart of the community. Strength. Make steel our strength as people. Where's Ron? He's right there. Yeah, it's right there at the core of the community, but also the core of your question, the economic impacts of having a strong steel industry, a strong industrial base in Hamilton. So the first thing you do is you make, and particularly at a time when Canada is going to need a lot more steel because we're going to build this. You're bored. We're going to need a lot more steel because we're going to build this country. And what we need to do is help the industry transition. To help more broadly, not just help, this isn't help, this is us helping ourselves as Hamiltonians, as Ontarians, as Canadians, is to build. We need more homes in Hamilton and this region. We can improve the port infrastructure. It's already the busiest port on the Great Lakes, but we can improve the port infrastructure. We can reinforce our energy infrastructure through some of the specialist steel that is produced here. So those nation-building projects, those are going to have an enormous multiplier effect across the country and back into the core of those sectors, and then, which is steel, and then out in the region as a consequence of that strength. What we can't let happen, what we won't let happen, is that the current trade situation with the United States and unfair trade practices in other countries, the combination of those guts our steel industry today, and then a few years down the road, we need our steel industry strong. We're not going to let that happen.
I still have not watched the full Poilievre interview. Poilievre finally on CBC. I think this is, unless I'm mistaken, and I can't think of any other example, unless there's one since the election I'm forgetting. But this is, I think, the first appearance of Poilievre on any CBC program since, like, I think even before he launched his leadership bid in, like, I think because he launched his bid in, like, February of 2022. So it's been a while. So I'm very interested to hear this. I think, especially as I think the by-election in Battle River Crowfoot is about almost 4 weeks away. Because it's scheduled for, I think, I think it was August 15th or 16th? When is the Battle River Crowfoot by-election date? For August 18th, so that's the Monday, I believe. Yeah, so 1, 2, 3, 4... About 4.5 weeks.
Welcome to the House.
Thank you for having me.
You have obviously seen these latest threats from Donald Trump. What, if anything, should Canada do
Did he intentionally pick
differently
the
in
worst
response?
soundscape for a podcast interview?
Well, we've called on the
possible?
Prime Minister and the government to allow
Like
the
an
International
active,
Trade
whatever
Committee to
this work site is?
reconvene right now to have
Like
emergency
you can hear
hearings.
engines going.
This will be a chance for all parties to work together on a plan to get back to the table, get a deal done that will end the tariffs, allow Canadians unfettered access again to the American market, get rid of the softwood tariffs, the Buy America rules, the tariffs that have since come in under President Trump, and to as well provide the Americans assurance that we're going to rebuild our military in order to do our part in continental security. I think that is the best way forward in order to get a deal and bring some certainty to the Canadian economy and to our workers.
Your party has suggested that this move to have the committee meet is a way to show support to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister, though, does already get a lot of advice when it comes to these negotiations. Obviously, he has his team, the ambassador, cabinet, the premiers of all political stripes, his Canada-U.S. Council. What do you think this would add that he's not already getting?
Well, first of all, I think it's important that he be transparent and demonstrate he has a plan. Originally, he said that he would have a deal at the G7, and then it became a deal by the 21st of July, and now we see it's delayed again to August the 1st. And we want to know what the plan is to put an end to the tariff chaos. Secondly, I think it would allow us to redouble our pressure on the government to reverse the disastrous liberal economic policies that have made us so hopelessly reliant on the Americans. For example, to pressure the full repeal of C-69, the anti-pipeline and anti-energy law, the tanker ban, the energy cap, the industrial carbon tax, the plastics ban. All these things are really beating our economy to the ground and making us more dependent on the Americans. We need is a plan to bring home production and paychecks to this country, put Canada first, and that's one of the things that we think we could put on the table in immediate hearings on international trade at the committee.
You recently suggested that by canceling the digital services tax, this was about 2 weeks ago, Mark Carney was putting his elbows down. Do you believe that Canada should have kept that tax in place?
I think the tax is a bad idea. I would have used it as a bargaining chip to get concessions in return.
Well, I should say, sir, we don't know, right?
For example,
because the negotiations aren't public, we don't know whether Canada got anything back, right?
Yeah, but
I don't know, but it tends to be a mistake to give the concession before you get one in return. Now, I agree with getting rid of the tax. It was a disastrous tax that would have made life more expensive for Canadians. But we have to negotiate to get an end to the softwood tariffs that came in under Obama, Biden, and now Trump, and that are hammering our forestry sector. We need an end to the Buy America policies that are killing construction jobs in Canada, an exemption that Mr. Harper got when he was Prime Minister. So far, Prime Minister Carney has not received any concessions. He hasn't made any headway, and I don't blame him entirely for that. Obviously, he's dealing with unfair treatment by the Americans, but we want to see some wins for Canada.
Blame him entirely.
We have suggestions on how to get those wins, because really we have to put our country first, and that's what we're asking for.
I mean, you say he hasn't made any headway, and I would again say that may or may not prove to be the case because so much of this is happening away from the public eye. But I want to go back to what Donald Trump has just said.
If I could, on that point, just say, and I hope he does, I hope that you're right. I hope that there are some big wins for Canada. And I told Prime Minister Carney in our several conversations that Conservatives stand ready to help in any way we can to reach out to lawmakers on the American side of the border.
You have to give some credit. This is a drastic change in tone. Could you imagine? I mean, I knew it is a new government. Carney is not Trudeau. But, could you imagine him saying anything this, cooperative? That's not a word. I just made it up. But, you know what I mean? Being this, good faith and all rowing together with Trudeau.
To offer suggestions and present a united Canadian front, because we really do hope that we get a good deal for all Canadians.
Are you doing that? Has he taken you up on that, or have you done that proactively?
So far, I have talked to numerous lawmakers and
it's a new tact,
advocated for the Canadian position. But we haven't
it's not
formally
attack,
engaged in traveling
sort of
to the
thing.
U.S. at this point. But I told the Prime Minister that we as Canadian Conservatives, we put our country first, and we're prepared to work for
I would say he's turning
from any
over
party
a
to
new
get a
leaf,
good deal
or
for
at least
Canada.
Want to drop a few names
trying
for us,
to
Mr.
present that he has
Poilievre, who you've been speaking
a
to?
new leaf conservative.
Well, I
one
spoke
would
to
say.
Pete Sessions. He's a congressman from Texas. Spoke to a number of other congressmen who were in town for the Calgary Stampede in passing. We stand ready to do more if the Prime Minister wants us to help engage in the diplomatic process. We're happy to do it. One great way to do that is let's pull back the International Trade Committee and work together on getting the message out.
So I want to continue with this latest message from President Trump. He has said that Canada will face greater tariffs if we try to retaliate against a higher level of tariffs that he is proposing. Should those threats stop Canada from retaliation? Do we need to heed that warning?
I think we should try to get the deal done on the deadline, and that way we don't have to worry about tariffs that hurt both of our countries. I'm at a company right now in Stettler, Alberta, that has been said that they're paying the import tariffs that Canada is charging on some of the materials they put into their products. And we want to make sure that whatever tariffs that we counter with against the Americans do maximum impact on the American side of the border, minimal impact on the Canadian side. We should only be targeting things that we can make ourselves, that we can get from other countries, or that we don't ultimately need, so that we minimize the economic pain that Canadians pay for an act that, frankly, is not the fault of our people or our country.
You mentioned the deadline, and you talked about the fact that it has changed a few times. But fundamentally, Mark Carney said the purpose of this deadline is deadlines focus the mind. Was the deadline a good idea, sir, or did that put Canada on the back foot?
Well, the challenge with a unilateral self-imposed deadline is it tells the counterparty that they have you on a clock, and a clock that only applies to you. It's like if we're playing chess and on your side it's speed chess, and you have a clock on you have to watch while you're making your move, and I don't.
The clock stops when you're not making your move. I'm being very nitpicky with this analogy.
Then I have a lot more ability to sit back and watch the board while you're watching the clock. And so I personally think it would have been better not to show that upfront to the Americans, because we know that President Trump will try to take advantage of it. That said, we do think that we do need to work to get this done as quickly as possible, because every passing day brings uncertainty and paralysis.
I just want to ask you one more thing about this trade situation. We can all see, and this is not necessarily new, but the president is quite hung up on Canada's supply management system. If that is ultimately where the deal hinges, if that's what's standing in the way of a deal, do you believe that Canada should be willing to give a little bit to allow Americans to sell more of their products here?
Well, what I would say to to our American friends is, are you willing to get rid of the tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars of farm subsidies that the American taxpayer gives producers on their side of the border, and that ultimately present a disadvantage to our farmers? You know, our farmers have to compete with massive multi-billion-dollar subsidies on the American side that we don't get here. And so I do find it passing strange that the U.S. government would say that our farmers are somehow getting an unfair advantage. But I also don't think that we should be making, I don't think we should be making, you know, these kinds of proactive, unilateral concessions, because that's not how you do a negotiation.
But is there any wiggle room, is what I want to understand from your point of view, because it's a very politically charged issue in Canada.
But there already has been wiggling. The last USMCA allowed for more market access by the Americans. I'm not even sure if the American producers are using the market access that Prime Minister Trudeau sacrificed. There's also been new penalties on Canadian exports of dairy, in the prior USMCA. So I think that Canada has made, the Liberal government has made big concessions on this already. And the problem is they're not getting it.
I guess we'll see where this conversation goes. I do want to ask you, though, before we let you go, we're reaching you in Alberta. You're there campaigning for the by-election in Battle River.
Are they not going to ask about the by-election?
It's a great place to be, back on the prairies.
It could, sure, I'll take your word for it.
Indeed. Well, listen, it does appear that we are heading towards a referendum on Alberta separation. When you are speaking to folks on the ground in the riding that you hope to win, are you telling them that they should remain part of Canada regardless of who is governing? I know you want to make the case for a Conservative government, but that referendum is likely to come sooner rather than later. Would you say to them they should stay even with Mark Carney in power?
Interesting way to frame it.
They should stay in Canada.
Yes. Are you actively advocating
yeah,
for
if you're asking me,
I would have just.
I'm advocating for a united Canada, and I say that on the doorstep. I say it when I'm in town halls. I say it every time it comes up. I said it at the Calgary Stampede. So I'm not being wishy-washy about this. I'm a Canadian. I'm a Canadian patriot. I'm proud that I grew up in southern Alberta, in Calgary, and I'm a very proud born and bred Albertan. Canada is my country. Canada is the country that the people in Battle River Crowfoot call home. If you look around this community, the communities here, you will see the Canadian flag everywhere. It's on front lawns, it's on doorsteps, it's on people have Canadian flags on their pickup trucks. This is a very patriotic place, and I have, with no hesitation whatsoever, saying that Alberta should be part of Canada. And I should also say, though, the days of telling Alberta to pay up and shut up, to just send more and more money to Ottawa, while the Liberal government there blocks pipelines, destroys the energy sector, disrespects farmers, harms the economy, those days are over. We need to respect what Alberta is contributing. We need pipelines built. We need to repeal C-69, the anti-pipeline law, get rid of the tanker ban, the energy cap, the industrial carbon tax. We need to respect licensed firearms owners and farmers. Those are all things that can happen within a united Canada, and I pledge to be both a champion for fairness for Alberta and a united Canada for our entire country.
And indeed, many of those issues did come up in the last election, and you're in this by-election because you lost the Ottawa riding that you held for 2 decades. If you couldn't win your own riding, sir, why should people in Alberta and across the country give you a second chance?
Well, listen, the reality is we got 8.3 million votes across the country, 2.5 million more than we had in the prior election. We added 25 seats. We got the largest share of vote of a Conservative Party has had since 1988. So the answer is that the voice that I bring represents those 8 million plus people who believed in my message of fighting inflation, of getting affordable homes built, of locking up criminals, defeating drugs, unleashing our resources. Those messages and those things mattered to those people. And I think that if you look at how the debate has changed
those
in
are the
Canada,
basics.
As a result of the arguments and the causes that I've taken on, that voice has been very important to countless people, and it's a voice I want to amplify.
Then how do you make sense of the 4,513 votes that you lost by in your riding?
Well, the reality is it's a riding that is over. It was very simple. I was very clear that we would be cutting the federal bureaucracy if I was Prime Minister. And it was an Ottawa riding with a lot of federal public servants who disagreed with that approach. And they ran a very aggressive campaign, particularly the public sector unions did, to defeat me on that basis. Now, some people might say, well, it wasn't the best idea to run on a smaller federal public service when you're an Ottawa MP, but I had an entire country to represent, and I had to be honest with people. Like, I guess I could have done what the Liberals did, which is hide their plans, but I didn't do that. I said very clearly, we're going to have to eliminate federal public service jobs. That's the only way you bring down taxes and deficits. And I was honest about that, and the people in that particular constituency voted accordingly.
Okay. Mr. Poilievre, you have been generous with your time in the middle of this by-election. I appreciate it, and I hope you'll come back on the program. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the invite. All the very best.
You too.
And I think up next we have his independent challenger.
Voters in the riding of Battle River Crowfoot are set to head back to the polls less than 4 months after April's federal election. Conservative MP Damien Carrick won the riding with more than 82% of the vote. But after Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre lost his Ottawa area seat, Carrick resigned, and that resignation has triggered a by-election and cleared the way for Poilievre to run in what's seen as one of the safest Conservative ridings in the country. Now, that by-election is set for August 18th, and Pierre Poilievre won't be the only person on the ballot. Bonnie Critchley is running as an independent candidate in the upcoming by-election in Battle River Crowfoot, and she joins me now. Bonnie Critchley, it's good to meet you. Thank you for joining us on the show today.
Good morning. Well, at least it's morning here right now. So, hi, how you doing today?
I'm very good. How are you doing? Tell us why you've decided to run in this by-election and run against the Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre in the seat.
It really boils down to my slogan, which isn't a slogan. It's simply the truth. It's, this is our home. This is our riding. We just had an election and we spent all that money and we elected the candidate of our choice, who promptly turned around and said, no, I don't want that mandate I asked you for. And we're spending another $2 million to vote in the angry guy from Ottawa, who doesn't know jack about this area. He may have been born in Calgary.
Coming in hot.
But he's from Ottawa. He hasn't been here. He hasn't lived here. And even if he had stayed in Calgary, this centers he's used to.
So you're mad. You don't like what Damien Carrick has done. You don't like what Pierre Poilievre has done, even though there is a long tradition in Canadian
bit
politics,
of a hint of a snarl when she said urban
there. Giving up their seat
the
for the
urban
leader.
center,
You don't like
the
this one
urban
bit.
centers he's used to.
Well, yeah, I would agree. Normally, yes. But this unseated leader it's not that he didn't have a seat. It's that he didn't bother to show up for his constituents. So they fired him. And now he just assumes we're going to vote him in when he lived in the same town as his constituents. We're 3,000 kilometers west. You think he's going to show up here ever?
So you don't buy out that he's running to represent this riding, to be the voice of Battle River Crowfoot in Parliament. You think this is just a path back to the House of Commons so we can get back into question period?
I wonder. I know there won't
Absolutely.
be, but God,
we are being used.
There's like a debate.
And myself and my neighbors are upset about this.
That'd be so good.
How upset do you think they are, Bonnie Critchley? Because this is a seat that reliably votes Conservatives, which is inarguably the reason it was picked. I think Damien Carrick is willing to step aside, and this seems, at least on paper, very little chance of losing. 82% voted for Mr. Carrick in the election on April 28th. How upset do you think they are? Is it enough to just reduce that number, or is this maybe in play?
It's going to be either or. Either way, he is not going to survive his leadership review in January. If he beats me, it's not going to be by much. I can tell you he's going to get 50, maybe 60 max if he beats me.
You think it's that close? What gives you that level of confidence? Do you have polling data? Do you have organization, fundraising? Tell me what makes you so confident of that.
Just literally, I'm going door to door and talking to my neighbors. And there are people.
Because here's the thing, I keep. It's what Bruce Fanjoy did, and everyone just assumed that it's Poilievre had the seat for 30 years. He's gonna keep it. It's just even if it's close, he'll still win. Yes, respectfully, let's fucking go.
Who voted for Damien, and they liked Damien, and then he sold us out.
Demure, sweetly.
And,
are you ready to rumble?
Tend to be an independent lot, and we don't like being used. We don't like our answers being assumed.
Yeah, in fact, he did have 2 years.
And that's what's going on right now. And yes,
but Poilievre had 30.
On paper, this is a very conservative area, which is why I'm running a right of center, but centrist campaign. And I am a palatable alternative to
not 30. I think
the Conservative Party, who has sold them out.
Why did you decide to run as an independent? The other major national parties, at least the New Democrats and the Liberals, are running candidates there. I know it's tough for people to run and vote Liberal in Alberta historically, but the New Democrats have seats there. They form government there in the recent past. And Mark Carney seems to be a more palatable Liberal, I think, for a lot of people in Alberta. Why not look at those options? Why run independent instead?
Well, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Mark Carney is a progressive conservative in a Liberal suit. But the reason I ran independent is two reasons. The first being that obviously I can't run for the CPC. Mm-hmm. The second being that this is Canadian politics. And the leak over from our south border of this two-party system is damaging to the Canadian polyscape. And this is also
presence there,
somebody can be both or one or the other, but doesn't have to stay within the team politics. Because team politics is very damaging. We have to hold our own team accountable. We have to hold our own representatives accountable. And you can't just own the libs or own the cons while your representative is literally voting against your best interests. But it beats the other team. This is not the Stanley Cup. This is politics. This is people's lives.
You don't like the polarization. You don't like sort of the tribalism that's emerging in politics over the last number of years.
No, and that's, like I said, that's a leak over from our south border. That is not Canadian politics. We are a multi-party system for a reason. And this multi-party system is what holds our two big parties in check.
So
then, of course...
Oh, go ahead. Finish it. No, go ahead. Finish your thought. Yep. Go ahead.
There is a third reason, and it's because in this current minority government, an independent would hold just an immense amount of influence, being a swing vote, when the current formal government, when the current formal government is short 3 seats.
This is not a bad
there's
point.
No question. Every vote counts in a minority parliament. We've just lived through that for a couple of elections and a number of years. But I want to go back to something you said, Ms. Critchley, that whatever the result is on election night, you think Mr. Poilievre will not survive his leadership review as a result of the outcome. Is that the end goal here to damage him to the point that
I wouldn't hate
his
it.
leadership is untenable? Is that what you're hoping to accomplish by
definitely
running
make
this?
my job a lot easier if there was a bunch of independents running around
hoping
just willing to say whatever
is
the hell they
keeping a
wanted.
voice for Battle River Crowfoot. For Battle River
That'd be
Crowfoot
great.
in Battle River Crowfoot, so that we have a voice in Parliament. He is not going to be a voice in Parliament for us. And if he loses that leadership review, the other problem we're going to have, is he going to stay as a backbencher in middle of nowhere when he's got that pension? Or are we going to be doing this again in January?
Do you think he'd seek re-election in Battle River Crowfoot, or is this just should he win this on the 18th of August, or do you think this is just a means to an end, and come next election, Pierre Poilievre will be running somewhere else?
Well, Damien and Monsieur Poilievre have told us as much, that Damien will run again in the next... Now, I don't know how that's going to work with his lovely new job, but we'll see how that goes. But no, I do not expect Monsieur Poilievre to try and stay in a backwater rural Alberta riding.
Just one last question. I mean, it's a very different riding than the one he represented here in the Ottawa area in Carleton, which is a much more dense, a lot of civil servants, rapidly growing sort of part of the National Capital Region. In an interview with my colleague Catherine Cullen, Pierre Poilievre suggested that he lost that seat because of his publicly stated intentions to cut the civil service, and that he was honest and upfront with what his plans were. What do you make of that reasoning as the reason why he lost the seat here in the Ottawa area and is now running as the reason why he lost the seat here in the Ottawa area and is now running in your neck of the woods?
Well, he seems to have a fascination with straws, because now he's grasping at straws. I have had so many lifelong Conservative voters from the Carleton region reach out to my campaign and say he was voted out because he did not represent them. They gave him multiple opportunities, and he was too busy gunning for the Prime Minister's job, as evidenced by him being in BC last week. Like I said, he's got a fascination with straws because he's grasping right now.
Okay. Final point. What does a successful election night look like for you, Bonnie Critchley?
Ultimately, it's me being elected and Battle River Crowfoot having a voice in Parliament, because it's not going to happen if Mr. Poilievre gets in.
Well, Bonnie Critchley, it was good to meet you. Thank you for the time today, and we'll check back in once we get those final results in mid-August. Thanks for joining us today.
Fantastic. Thank you for the time. Have a good day.
Oh. Nope. All right. So, before we do some fun stuff, a few more things to get through. So the other story related to Poilievre, it's causing a little bit of consternation, is that apparently, even after rumors that she may be ousted, which I know it's the correct one, but like speculation of ouster, like that's a noun to me, not a verb. Of her ousted, I don't know. Apparently, Jenny Byrne will survive another day as advisor to Pierre Poilievre. This is from Stephanie Levitz. Killing it once again. So Jenny Byrne, campaign director, who many blame for the Conservatives' loss in the spring election, will continue to play a role in the party, but sources say she is stepping away from the daily grind out in Parliament Hill. Ms. Byrne did not personally return a request for comment from the Globe and Mail on Tuesday, but party spokesperson Sarah Fisher said Ms. Byrne remains involved. Jenny Burns is still an advisor to the Conservative Party of Canada and Pierre Poilievre, she said in an email. But two sources told the Globe that she is scaling back her connection to the party's work in opposition. The Globe is not naming the sources as they were not authorized by the party to discuss internal human resources issues. Word that Miss Byrne had been forced out spread through Ottawa political circles Tuesday, the latest round of speculation on whether leader Pierre Poilievre will make any changes to how his party does business after an election campaign that returned yet another Liberal minority government. Miss Byrne and Mr. Poilievre have a personal and professional relationship that goes back decades because they dated. Wait, do we drop? What happened? Uh-oh. Mine still says we're free streaming. Are we back? Yep, looks like we're back. Yes, all right, so return to this. So Miss Byrne and Mr. Poilievre have a personal and professional relationship that goes back decades. Don't start burping now. She's sometimes referred to as the most powerful woman in Conservative politics, and she played a significant role in the previous Conservative government led by Stephen Harper. Miss Byrne ran Mr. Poilievre's party leadership race in 2022, and in the years after that victory, she was a near constant presence on Parliament Hill, though she never had a formal title. She was involved in daily calls and meetings and helped direct strategy and messaging, even as she was also running her own lobbying firm, Jenny Byrne and Associates, out of Toronto. Toward the end of 2024, it seemed that the Conservatives would form government in the election, and speculation then was whether Miss Byrne would become Mr. Poilievre's chief of staff or continue with her firm. The election of U.S. President Donald Trump changed the political landscape. Mr. Poilievre and Miss Byrne struggled to recalibrate their party's narrative to account for the surge of Canadian nationalism amid the trade dispute with the U.S. So, though on April 28th, the party won more seats and more votes than it had in 2021, it still failed to defeat the Liberals. To some with construction of that sentence is interesting. I can't read it properly. To some within the party, that is Miss Byrne's fault, and the fact that Mr. Poilievre lost his own seat is held up as evidence of her failure. Others lay more of the blame on him and point to Prime Minister Mark Carney's adoption of some Conservative pledges as evidence that their policy offerings weren't the issue, but their leader was. Mr. Poilievre is now running in a by-election for the Alberta riding of Battle River Crowfoot. No formal post-mortem of the party's election campaign has been announced, but Mr. Poilievre's leadership will be up for review as the grassroots at a convention scheduled for January. My colleague Abbas also reported, I think like a few weeks ago or a month ago, that Poilievre was kind of conducting his own informal post-mortem, calling up like defeated like candidates and some of his MPs and even some of the like sort of social media influencers that had been helping contribute to the campaign. Poilievre has been asked outright in the past whether he'd fire Miss Byrne and has supported her. On Monday, he was asked whether anything was going to change about how he runs the party. In his answer, he referred to the fact that the Conservatives won 41% of the popular vote. It's a number that used to be enough to form government. The Liberals won in 2021 with just 32% of the vote. The collapse of support for the NDP, however, saw Liberals garner nearly 44% in April. 41% might not be enough in the future, and so we have to ask, how can we expand even beyond the number and reach even more Canadians with our message? Mr. Poilievre told reporters after an unrelated announcement. We need to present ourselves as a government in waiting, which is possibly the reason he's been sort of modulating his aggressive tone. So there's also reporting that Jenny Byrne and Associates will also remain on the payroll. See if I can find that. Byrne. Yeah, from the National Post reporting, her firm will remain on party payroll as well, which is interesting. Because the other thing is also not just the election results, the amount of money they brought in. I think it was like something like 40 million. Maybe closer to 50. So, and which is just a gigantic number. So it's like everyone keeps calling it cope, and it might be cope, but also it's technically correct cope. By every other metric, their party is doing incredibly well. They just didn't win the election. And if that's the only metric you care about, that's completely understandable. Where it's like, why would you care about like how many yards you ran or pass completion averages if you lost the Super Bowl? Who cares about the statistics if you lost the big game sort of thing? And then finally, I think the last one we have, I was going to read the New York Mag article, but that one's like I think it's like, how long is this read? It's like, I think it's like maybe a 20-minute read. So speaking of New Leaf Liberals, Bonnie Crombie admits Ontario Liberals made mistakes in losing campaigns, says she'll address our weaknesses. From Robert Benzie, Queen's Park Bureau Chief at Toronto Star. As Ontario Liberal leadership review vote looms later this summer, Bonnie Crombie is going on the offensive. The Liberal leader has released a 4-minute video aimed at party members, acknowledging the shortcomings of her Feb 27th provincial election campaign and promising changes going forward. It's only 4 minutes. We'll watch it. I've only seen a couple of clips.
I've been traveling across the province, participating in regional meetings. But I wanted to share some of my thoughts directly with you about what went well in the last election and, well, what didn't, and where we can change and grow as a party. I believe in accountability, and that's why the OLP team will be conducting a robust and thorough campaign review process. While participating in the regional review sessions, I've heard some common themes, constructive criticisms, and some suggestions. We could have open candidate nominations earlier to allow more time for local fundraising and door knocking.
Where have I heard that before?
And in response to that, I'll say that right now, we intend to open nominations in many ridings as of January 2026 to ensure that we have a head start recruiting candidates. We could have done more to lift up and engage the rural and northern parts of Ontario too. I plan to address this issue head on as well. I'll be touring the province to help fundraise and rebuild local ridings, but I'm also going to engage in a conversation with the
Couldn't use any videos of her touring anywhere in the north of part of the province, could they?
OLP executive and management to ensure that there are dedicated resources.
I had to use a clip
such
of
as
her in
staff
suburban
to support
Ontario.
Rural and northern ridings long before
Most likely
the next grid is dropped.
GTA.
We'll also be having hard internal conversations about the choices made and speaking with our
Hard
leadership
internal
to
conversations.
identify the successes and the failures. We have a window between now and to the next election to revitalize the grassroots of our party.
Damn it. Why is there such a
Close
long
the distance
pause before
between
my
the rural and
clips
urban
play?
parts of our party, take new approaches to campaigning digitally and at the doors, and above all, be in a position to defeat Doug Ford and the Conservatives. There will be a time to talk about the next election, but now is the time to re-engage the grassroots. We will use the learnings from this campaign to make sure the next campaign is run differently. We must evaluate and build on our strengths and identify and address our weaknesses. I'm proud to be the leader of our party, and I'm proud of what we accomplished together in the last election. We regained official party status for the first time since 2018, unlocking millions in resources to support our team with policy, research, and communications efforts. All of our caucus members were re-elected. We picked up 5 new seats. We improved